life is opera. There is no reason in opera.
Hey there, this is Mix Sessions 2024 award season coverage. I'm Jennifer Walden, here with the sound team on Maria. We have supervising sound editors John Warhurst and Gwennole Le Borgne, re-recording mixer Lars Ginzel, and production sound mixer Mac Ruth. Welcome, guys, and thank you so much for being here to chat about Maria.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So Maria is a biopic on legendary opera singer Maria Callas, who is played by Angelina Jolie in this film. So Angelina trained for like 7 months to learn how to sing opera. So Mac, did you record Angelina's singing on set? Like, what was that like, and how did you capture that?
Yeah, I mean, she sang, and we were there. I mean, it's a big part of it is it's a team effort there, and we started early with Pablo, with Angelina, with John on a Zoom call talking about singing, and we, it was there was a lot of buy-in there, and it was really brave of Angelina, and basically her thing. Once she said go, then we put everything into motion to make it work. On set there's some motivating performance, there's some click tracks, tempo stuff, song itself, in various ways. If we shoot it super wide, we could play the music out loud, but we did very intimate stuff, very tight, which is her singing, and we fed it in her ear. And, it's important to give her own mix, whatever she asks for, whatever helps her to perform. But ultimately it's about this reality layer, and you can see it in her face and her veins. She's heavily moving air, and and that's the performance. She's literally singing. So it was a big part of the thing to create create her performance in a way, or motivate her performance, help her get it done. And there's also a lot of trust there. I've worked with her before. I worked on her directorial debut, and we have a bit of a friendly relationship, and it was great to see her again on this one. And so I think it was a kind of amongst friends kind of feeling, and I think we got a lot done. I commend her all the way. I think it was fantastic what she produced on set.
Yeah, that's so brave. I can barely belt out a karaoke song. I can't imagine singing opera, and in front of other people too. Did those recordings of her singing, did that actually make it into the final film, or were those performances blended with or replaced with the real Maria Callas instead?
So as Mac was saying, when Angelina was first spoke to us, I think that she was in training as much for the because it's not just an audio performance; it's a visual performance as well.
Yeah,
how opera singers sing, how they kind of enunciate those words, the postures that they might make, how to hold yourself as a singer, all these sort of training that you need to go through. So all the recordings, basically, and I know that there's been many interviews where Pablo's spoken about this as well. What happens with all of those recordings is that the other thing about recording on set as well, when people talk about recording things live, they think about it as being like some kind of a gig, where you're going to go up on stage and you're going to sing that song like people would perform. They would go on stage and sing the song. It's nothing like that when you film a song. You might have to sing it like 20 times in the day. You're going to have to go over and over and over and keep doing that same performance again. But the great thing about that for us in post-production means that we have, therefore, 20 takes of Angelina singing that song, or however many takes that particular performance was. So it gives us a lot of scope, a lot of material, and that was also part of the her performing it was to create a good visual performance and to give us as much material as possible, especially on the close-ups. And once we have that material, it was a complex thing because part of it was story as well. In post production, we see Maria in the present day, and we see Maria in her prime, in her past, which is obviously where she's hoping to get back to. Whenever we go back into the past and we're showing Maria in her past, in her prime, it's pretty much quite a lot of Maria Callas. But when we go back to the present and we're with Angelina performing as in present day, then it's much more of a blend between Angelina and Maria to make that vocal work. There's some of the I know why Pablo's already said sometimes it's 2%, sometimes it's 5%, sometimes it's 40%, blah, blah, blah. It's because I always describe it as a bit like audio painting, really, because what you do is you take all of her takes, and then we take the Maria Callas vocal, and then with each word or each line, sometimes you think, oh, we could use some Angelina there. I think, actually, no, it needs a bit more of the Maria power. Okay, let's put some Maria in. Oh, but now it doesn't look as good as it did when Angelina was singing. Okay, let's try and put a bit more of Angelina. And each word and each line is considered and worked and reworked and then reworked as a whole to try and find the best overall performance of the blend between all of these recordings to make it emotionally engaging and also utterly believable. We're aiming for those two things to marry together perfectly into the movie.
Yeah,
So that's why. Yeah, that's why it is a blend, and it's not like, oh, it's a specific blend. It's like it's changing from word to word to line as to how much we've used.
Yeah, and maybe to add to that, it's really not just like a black and white thing, and like blending between one and the other. I mean, sometimes it's both playing at the same time, and like John said, like one of the big challenges of this project really was like marrying that the voice of Maria Callas blended with Angelina's voice to that picture of Angelina performing on stage and making it everyone in the audience believe that it's her singing. Yeah. And that is like the challenges that are implied in that is also that we're taking Maria Callas's voice from recordings ranging from the 50s to the 70s, like opera recordings that were not meant to be sort of married to a close-up shot. Like we're opening the film with a close-up shot of Angelina performing Ave Maria, sung by Maria Callas. So that's like quite a challenge to get that done and make it believable. And that's why, like John said, it's not just one thing or the other. It's a constant mixture, and it's really weighing in on every little note, every syllable, every breath. Breaths were an essential key to that, and most of the breaths, if it's not Maria Callas's original ones, then we used Angelina's onset breaths, and that's also something that's creating authenticity for the performance, and which is why it's so important that she's given all her performance on set, so we could use it for that purpose.
And were you using something like Vocaline or Envy to help slave Maria Callas's performances to what Angelina is doing, so it kind of fits her mouth better? Or how did you help the blending of those two voices, or even just intercutting between them?
No, it's 100% manually. I really, really prefer to do it completely manually and really, work. And it's like sculpting in a way, because sometimes I'll do the vocal and then I'll listen to it the next day and I'll think, oh, actually, that's not right. So I'll change it again. And it's like a constant thing. And then when we were in the final mix, when we could really see it on the big screen, I think we spent about 3 days mixing Ave Maria, the opening song, and again watching and just again finally chiseling that vocal so it really connected with Angelina's performance. I think the other thing that Lars touched on as well was the audio that we were working with was some of the early recordings were 1949, ranging right through to the 70s, and that was a huge challenge because obviously we were having to deal with on the other side, we've got Mac's beautiful recordings from 2024, which we need to put into 1949 audio, and so that in itself, before we could even start this work, we needed to kind of use software like AI software to separate out Maria Callas's voice from the original recording. So then we could go in and work on Maria's voice to get rid of any of those kind of like artifacts that are nothing to do with Maria's original performance. We're talking about like noises from the recording process that was used in that time, which obviously is much less proficient than the audio we can record today. So there was a big sort of cleanup of Maria, the original Maria Callas audio, just before we could even start this process of putting it onto the film. And then the whole music side of it was another part that we needed to re-record all of the music so that we could create Dolby Atmos mixes to give the kind of power that you needed for this film to carry in a cinema, because essentially they were basically mono recordings from 1949. Yeah. It wasn't really sort of a cinematic sound that was going to come straight from that single mono recording.
No, and like John said, it's been a lot of manual work, like what you asked for, like matching those mouth movements. I mean, there's an awful lot of classic editing involved, and then we went all down all those rabbit holes of actually clip gaining, like depending on how open her mouth would be. Sometimes the modulation of Angelina's performance would be slightly different than the original performance than Maria's. So we'd modulate the clip gain ever so slightly on those very, very short moments just to help and match things. And then we went into we went into RX to match like the different harmonics, basically, to make it match better. So other elements would blend in better with Maria's voice. And so it's been a lot of manual work and really going through each song again and again, and always thinking like, okay, what's the next 2% we can get out of this? What's the next 1%? And until we finally felt like, okay, well, maybe that's it now.
So you were dealing with mixed tracks for, the real Maria Callas, right? Like you didn't have like split tracks of her. So if she's performing with an orchestra, the orchestra is like baked into that performance in a mono sound file. Yeah. That's insane.
That was one of the first things that we asked the estate, and we asked Warner Classics, what do you have in your archive? And they said, what you have now is what we have. And that was
man.
it. The archive cupboard was bare. There was nothing else in there. There wasn't even any documentation about how it was recorded. There was literally no other documentation, or certainly no multi-tracks or anything like that. Which obviously when we first started, I remember when we first started, I mean, I was quite concerned as to how I said to Pablo about, we need the film to sound like it's a 2024 film. It needs to sound, the same as other films that are coming out now. It can't sound too sort of mono and so we needed to really think about the ways that we could do that, the ways that we could create the soundtrack for this film.
And so you re-recorded the orchestral parts. And I know in the film, like you see the orchestra on screen. Mac, was the orchestra playing like there during filming, or were they just miming? How did the orchestra work in this whole thing from a production sound standpoint?
We had a little bit of both. We had a real orchestra in the Budapest Opera House. I know at least one of our orchestras was not a real orchestra at one point on one wide shot. But, there was a lot of live music. All of our singers, the street operas in Trocadero in Paris were live and real and sung live. And, those were big challenges, was to to perform intimate dialogue, going and then breaking out into large scale street operas. There was a little bit of everything there. There was plenty of music recorded. There was some of the intimate piano coaching, and there was lots of music elements to be recorded. I think John and Csaba Faltai, our local music coordinator in Budapest, did a wonderful job putting that together and bringing real quality musicians to the table. Some amazing guys. So there was a lot to do there. Every day was we recorded the on the boat in Greece. The band was live, and we had one shot at it. I mean, it was a half day, and there were so many challenges about the logistics of this thing, but we had to just run and gun and try to pick up what we got, because the things were right there. All the pieces were there for us. I'm thankful we got to collect as much as we could and supply it, and hopefully it was utilized and as best it could be.
It was, yeah. All those recordings from the boat that you did, and I know how worried you were about getting your cart out onto that boat. We spoke about it the night before. I remember the having to move your cart from one boat to another boat in the middle of the sea. But it was successful. The cart arrived onto the boat, and you did some great recordings, which are exactly what we hear in the movie. That's what we put straight into the film.
The orchestral music parts, as you were saying, John, that was all re-recorded in order to fill out like the Atmos surround space. So can you talk a little bit about those orchestral recordings?
Yeah, so the way that we do it is we start off by separating out Maria's vocal, and then that leaves us with the original orchestra and Maria's vocal separate. So that means that we can do all the kind of cleaning up work on Maria's vocal to get it to sound as modern day, as clean as possible. But then we still need the original orchestra, because then what we do is we map out that orchestra in terms of a tempo map. So we generate a tempo map, and then we re-recorded the Budapest Scoring Orchestra in Hungary to replay those parts, so that we could then have a brand new recording of those orchestras playing and do sort of Dolby Atmos mixes. Then what you do is you put the original orchestra, you sync it back into the mix of the Dolby Atmos mix, so that then you can put the Maria's vocal, because you need the original orchestra to be able to put Maria's vocal back in. But because we have Maria's vocal now separate, means that we can put it into the center channel of the speaker, so it feels like it's coming from Angelina's mouth. When we cut back to the Angelina in a prime, and we just want the power of that moment, because that was the best way to tell that story between how she is today and how she was in her prime. We tried sort of various ways and tried, maybe she's not singing so great, or maybe she's not. But then I think that ultimately, by the use of Angelina's voice, and obviously Angelina's, even though she will have 7 months of training, it takes a lifetime to build up sort of muscle strength in your diaphragm and your lower abdomen to be able to really, really sing with that kind of power of an opera singer. So we could use that to our advantage as well in using parts of Angelina where she's not as strong. But then when we go back to prime Maria Callas, of course, it's immensely powerful, and you then have the Dolby Atmos mixed orchestra to back up that voice. So you get this contrast between the sort of present day of, blended with Angelina, with the piano, to all of a sudden Maria Callas in her prime. So we can tell that story. And I know that some people even now said, well, I thought she sounded fine in the present day as well. But obviously you can only really use the power to tell that story. We talked about you can't suddenly sing out of tune or something, because Maria Callas would never have done that anyway. So even the day before she died, she probably would never sing out of tune. So I think you have to be faithful to the person that we're representing as well. She was one of the most iconic voices of the 20th century, So that's the way that we decided was to tell that story, was to have the power of prime Maria Callas versus a weakened, more present day.
And this is the story of her life as well, not just her music. So as far as setting the scene and putting the audience into this world, into Maria's reality, how did you guys do that? Can you talk about what went into your Bee Gees or your crowds and some of the things that you had to maybe field record or custom record to create this world of like 1970s Paris?
This one's Gwen, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, it's not. The main thing was not to recreate Paris in the late 70s, because most of the movie is in Maria's perception. So we keep her point of view, and so it's the sound of the 70s, but heard through her ears. So it's quite different, and there's also all the there is also her memories, and also all the part when she takes pills, so she has an altered perception. So it's really a game between period sounds and modified sounds with the effects of the mandrax, and also how sounds create links between the different periods of the movie, and how we can immerse into her memories.
That's cool. Could you talk about some of your subjective POV sounds or one of the scenes? Can you break down your sound design on that?
Yes, actually, we thought that we had to keep as much as possible her point of view. So with taking pills, she's just being really alone, and just she's in quite a silent flat in Paris, and so we had to create something which is a different kind of silence, like it's an inner silence. So we thought that one of the way to do that was to bring some kind of the inner sound of the body. So it's like if we were hearing like when we put fingers on our ears, and to create something which is really very close to her perception, but it creates something quite strange. It's not a real silence; it's an inner silence, and it helps us to get close to her.
Maybe to add to that as well, when Maria is taking mandrax, the idea was that she's trying to shut things out of her mind. She's trying to shut out the doubts of, will she ever be able to sing again? And so Pablo was quite determined to look for the most minimalistic approach we could find to highlight that, which ultimately led to the result we use in the film, which is building down sort of into real silence for quite a while for a movie, for a narrative movie. It's quite it's quite jarring actually to go to pure silence for a couple of seconds, so without anything happening audio wise, and then we're sort of going back when she's taking the pills for the first time, but I think the idea behind it was coming from this idea that we're making a movie about a voice, so that is taking center stage. And I mean, Gwen had prepared different layers of altered sounds, of manipulated sounds that would still be very subtle, but it would play in a very different way than just going all the way down and having the audience to lean in order to stay connected to Maria. So that was sort of the thought process that led us to that sort of motive of becoming more and more silent whenever she's really on mandrax, and everything else is shut out, and she's in her own kind of small kind of world, so to say.
Yeah,
I love that contrast too of the. Go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, the design was often, as Gwen said, and Lars said, it was often from her point of view. It was the world as seen through her eyes and heard through her ears. So these sort of different perspectives, these very internal perspectives. And we did discuss as well as to how long we could hold that silence for before people actually just wonder if the film's broken and the sound. We tried with different lengths to see where that would be. I think we're right on the edge, if I'm honest, still, and we said that at the time. We're right on the edge. It just comes back in time before people start to think the film's broken. It has broken. Oh no, it's back on. So you get this feeling of the world closing down around you, which was obviously the effect of the mandrax going through her body.
I love that contrast of the really powerful singing and then, the quiet internal moments when she's on the drug. So that's good.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to the production side of things, and I forgot to ask Mac, when you were recording in some of these really great locations like the La Scala Opera House, did you capture impulse responses from these places that you could share with the team to get the proper acoustics of these spaces?
We had 4 hours in La Scala,
Roger that.
we had to fly in, unpack for an hour, get in the 4 hours, and get out, and then leave the next morning. It was super tight. I mean, I think we only found out we got La Scala. Well, it all kind of was agreed upon at, literally all happened within 3 days. We heard about it. We had to go travel there, do it, and get out. Impulse responses were not on the table for that thing. That being said, we tried to get, some stereo ambiances of everything, of every room we're in, real basic stuff. We kind of have that as part of the basic, that's sort of our basic strategy. But, we're focusing on the actors, the dialogue, the singing, motivating the singing, monitoring everything. Pablo sometimes wants to hear the music, just the clean singing, just Angelina, or just the recording tracks. There's those sort of functionalities have to be sort of dished out, in each location. But like I said, we went from large scale playback out in open streets of Paris, fighting the traffic during the Rugby World Cup, all the way to a little bag in a boat, which was really tight in certain places. So, but yeah, impulse responses, I have to admit, no. But
okay, that was
But I think we
not
got faithful reproductions or recordings in each space as best we could.
They were fantastic. Yeah, they were really good. They were, and we got lots of them as well because Angelina sang so many. With each time and also because she started off. She started when we first started in Greece. I mean, she literally cleared the room. There was no one there. But by the time we got to La Scala, she was pretty easygoing about it by then, much more relaxed. She and so I think she sort of grew into it as well, didn't she? Throughout the shoot, as she got more used to it, as she got more used to this idea that she would be performing on set. Which I know she's spoken about quite a lot in her interviews about finding her own voice throughout the process. But yeah, we got a lot of great recordings though from every single performance. Everyone especially on the close-ups, as you were saying, whenever it was a close-up, it had to be her performing. That was what we always discussed. The wides, because the other problem is as as I mentioned before, when you're asking someone to sing something once, that's fine. But when you're asking to sing it 20 times, then that's a whole other deal. So it is good to try and build in the breaks. So when you do the really, really wide shots where it's very, very far away or things like that, it's not as important for her to sing, to perform and sing out in those shots. One of the things we talked about a lot. But certainly all those tight shots, it's performed. They're all performed. But yeah, we had a lot of material.
Thank you guys so much for joining me to talk about Maria. Best of luck to you this award season. And if you're watching this video, please make sure to vote. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.